My name's Oscar Katumwa Ranzo, and I come from Uganda. And I'm a writer for children's stories and adult fiction. And what I am doing now is that I started this organization called the Oasis Book Project, which is basically aimed at promoting the reading and writing culture among Ugandan children and adults, and also to raise the profile of Ugandan literature locally and beyond the country. But the best thing about being a writer in Uganda currently is that, unlike in many other countries where there's so many writers, like the competition is high, in Uganda, there's it's a virgin territory for writers. So, and there is still so much opportunities for writers to tell their stories, and the audience is there. That there's a hunger among especially children, for children's stories. So writers in Uganda, that's a very good thing. That's one thing I realized coming here. I saw that many people have the qualities to write, and that they have the talent, but because the market is saturated, and so many of them might never get an opportunity to be published. In Uganda, the chances are there. The one thing about being a writer is that there's no support system. Like there is no resources, there is no libraries, there is no creative writing courses. There is no other writers, like people to, you meet very few people who share your writing aspiration. So I told people when I first came that I've been writing for so many years in Uganda, and I never met another writer in my hometown. And many people were surprised, but that's true. But then I come into Iowa, and I find there's so many writers, and that's been a very good experience for me. So that's the one thing about being a writer in Uganda at this moment. And Uganda is a beautiful country. It's gifted by nature, so we have the perfect climate. If you come to Uganda, you'll just hear the first thing that you love is the climate. And then you love the people, because everyone's friendly and happy, and so we are gifted by nature. That's what everyone says. So that's why Winston Churchill, when he visited Uganda, he called it the Pearl of Africa. So, good country. I write to educate as well as to entertain. So when you look at my stories, you realize that all of them address some they tackle certain issues that, especially for children, which their parents or teachers might never get the time to teach them. So, and my stories are written in a way that they should provoke debate, to to set the stage for conversation about these issues. To sensitize children about these issues. And also that I realized that even for my adult fiction, when I wrote, I've always been responding to social issues. So that's why basically I write. I want to entertain as well as to educate. I think there is a song of Lawino by Okot Bitek. Song of Lawino by Okot Bitek, and it's one. I think it's the best work to come out of Uganda today. And the good thing is about Okot Bitek is one of the writers that first came to the IWP when it first started out in 1969, and I totally recommend that work to be read. Yeah. Yes, when I first started out to write, I read a lot of poetry, and also tried to write poetry, but at some point, I think as I progressed in my literary journey, I suddenly focus more on reading fiction. So in the past few years, I've not read poetry actively, but there was a time when I was at the first level that I was reading a lot of poetry. But I totally think that the state should support writers financially, because my belief is that a culture without books will perish. So if for example, in my country, because writers are not supported, and we've had a more oral tradition, like stories have been being passed down by elders to their children for a long time. But with the new order, where many people are living in urban areas away from their grandparents, all these stories are being lost and they are not being recorded. And there's a danger that several years down the road, our culture will have somewhere it might become extinct. And especially now with the social network and globalization, children are consuming things from all over the place. And so I really think that it's very important for governments to support the writers. And I know, and I've seen that when coming here, I've realized that in many countries where there's active support, then they literally feel in those countries is blooming, Whereas in our countries where there's no government support, in comparison, you realize that there is a big gap. So I totally think that's something that government should consider doing. Yeah, it's my first time in the United States, and the biggest surprise for me was all the writing activity going on in Iowa City. Like writers, the way here are treated highly. Like every time there's readings at least every day you hear of a reading. There is there's a chance that the person you talk to, like even in a restaurant, there will be a writer. In a bar, there's a writer, and then. Oh man, I never been in a place where there's so many writers, and that's, for me, that's very surprising. You give readings, you go to schools, everyone, and so yeah, the writers are respected, and that was for me surprising. Like back home, I never tell people I'm a writer because they don't care. My friends didn't know that I write until all my friends and many members of my family, apart, let's say from one brother, they who knew that I write because I used to share with him my stories. But everyone didn't know until I showed them a book, and then they didn't believe that. They said, "When did you get the time to write?" I don't waste the time to tell people. I rather tell them I'm a dancer, that they can deal with that. But writer, no. So I think that was very surprising for me. I think people would ask me what I prefer to write. What I would rather be identified as a children's writer or adult fiction. They say, that's no one has ever asked me that. They ask me why. They always ask me. People ask me how I manage to shape, but no one has asked me what I prefer to write, because and because I've written now everything. I've written the stories for like picture book type, and then young adults, and then for adult fiction. I think I would rather be a children's writer. So when I go by, I always tell people that I've written this novel, but I really don't care if it gets published. So I just wrote it because I felt that I needed to write it, and many people were telling me, "You need to write something like for adults in order to be taken seriously." So so anyway, I wrote it. But everything considered, I'm happier being a children's writer. So that's when I'm happiest writing them and reading for children. So I was telling someone that day I went to Des Moines and read for these children. That was like my greatest day in Iowa City, because I just liked it. Yeah. When I went to Des Moines, the teacher told me before I went to the class, well, like, my children are really unruly. They don't pay. They might not pay attention. I was like, okay. But when I go in and started to read, everyone paid attention, and they kept quiet, and they listened, and they had all these questions, and then they got excited, and that's what happens even in Uganda. So like, yeah, children are the same. Any last words? So yeah, I think. Yeah, I think the last word I should be is to encourage people like who have writing aspirations to pursue their dreams, like wherever they are, because my story. So when I started to write, I didn't know what was if my work would ever be published, because there was no the publishers in Uganda don't publish fiction, so I didn't know. I didn't have any tools to any resources to help me develop my craft, but I was determined to succeed, and this is where I am. And I think that's a testament that if you're determined to achieve something, in the end you succeed. So that's my. So and when I go back, I just want to demonstrate to many Ugandans who have writing aspirations, who might have abandoned them because they think it's hard, and then so to show them that if you really want to achieve something, the forces of nature will conspire to help you make it happen. That's my last word.